Jambo la kwanza kusema kwamba hakuna nchi good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'll wait for you to be ready and then we will start. From my days in the media, now there's a wind blowing this side, so you can get a windshield here. Human bodies are wanaelewa. Wamejipanga. Kuna ka windshield. Microphone iko sawa? Ama upepo bado unagonga?
Iko sawa.
My brothers and sisters, you can give me a thumbs up if you're ready, then we'll start. Hii serikali ya bottom up, we don't leave anybody behind. I will speak in, I'll read a statement in English, and then after that I'll do a short speech in Swahili to allow you to be able to organize. Alafu hii podium yetu tengeneza, ikuwe ni podium ni microphone moja tu, alafu the others are hooked up. Bwana Kabira. Tutapanga hii hii ilikuwa before I was government spokesman. I'm just buying time for her to be ready. Chap chap. You're good?
Thank you. I'm good.
Thank you. Welcome. I wish to thank each one of you for finding time to be here over other competing priorities. I'd like to say a few things. That one, since the government of Kenya Kwanza took office 10 months ago, President William Ruto has engaged the international community and greatly succeeded in promoting Kenya as an attractive trade and investment destination. The net effect of this has led to an array of new opportunities that are having a positive impact on our economy. Last week, Kenya hosted over 10 heads of state and government to discuss new frontiers for the promising Africa Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA. And just this morning, President Ruto met with the Ambassador Catherine Tai, the principal trade advisor and spokesperson on US trade policy. At the ministry headquarters, I have just signed a host country agreement with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that makes Nairobi the regional headquarters of one of the largest philanthropic organizations in the world. And this office, once it's open, will employ thousands of people. A lot of money will be circulating in Kenya throughout their programs. I've also held meetings with diplomats from the United Nations and other bilateral partners. In other words, life is going on smoothly and as normal. I'd like to say that to everybody that Kenya is still open and will always be open for business, because as a government we continue to position our country as a preferred trade, investment and tourism destination. The truth is that, however, these efforts are being derailed by economic saboteurs disguised as protest against the cost of living. It is good to understand that it is true. The issue of cost of living is an issue for discussion. It is true that things have been tough for the last 4 or 5 years since COVID and now the Ukraine war and others. It is true that when I visited Europe with the president, some of the countries we went to were having riots and demonstrations as a result of cost of living, and that we had even to change our flights because we couldn't overfly other countries where the transport sector had gone on strike because of issues of cost of living. It is true that there's been a shortage of food and flour all over the world. It is true that there's an issue of discussion between Russia and Ukraine about the flow of grain. It is true that the cost of petrol has gone up all over the world as a result of the war and because of the cutting off of fuel flow from Russia to Western Europe and the controls by the Middle Eastern countries. It is true about the cost of living. But as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, when I go to all these countries, from the Caribbean to the Americas to everywhere, the cost of living is a discussion all over the world. It is not just an issue in our country. But it's a live issue. But the reality is that we are better off because we have a plan. And things may look tough now, but they are getting better and they'll be better. The economy and the people of Kenya are the ultimate victims of the so-called Maandamano. In quotes, Maandamano, but it's not Maandamano. We all know that we need to stabilize our economy, create new job opportunities for our young population, and this only happens in a safe, secure and stable environment, devoid of propaganda and political opportunity. It is therefore, unfortunately, this is very important, that on July the 14th, 2023, the spokesperson of the Office of the United Nations Human Rights, OHCHR in Geneva, issued a media statement on protests in some parts of Kenya, in which he alleged, in quotes, widespread violence and unnecessary or disproportionate use of force. He further alleged that 23 people have been killed and dozens injured in the demonstrations. This statement was not only inaccurate but misleading and appeared to have been written in support of a propaganda campaign by people opposed to the democratic will of the people. The ministry has protested to the office of the spokesperson on this unsubstantiated statement. We will be engaging through appropriate channels to ensure that the international community is not sucked into conspiracies that are aimed at destabilizing our nations. Let me break it down. It talks about widespread violence. Where was the widespread violence? We just saw violence in some cities in Europe the other day, which you cannot even compare with what happened in a few places the other day. My grandmother, my aunties were living life very well. You know, you talk about widespread violence as if Kenya was burning. Very wrong. Those are language written by people here for them in New York. Talking about disproportionate use of force. We saw areas whereby there were no police at all, and people were destroying roads, burning things with no police presence, where they cannot say that they were incited or provoked by the police. And so they're talking about rebellion. There are about 23 people. Who are those 23 people who they say died? I'd like to know them, their names and others. So they're just throwing names and figures out there. You know, that is bad manners for an organization of such stature. That is really a high level of inefficiency and unprofessional work, because they need to do their own research before they come out issuing letters and statements that are basically full of misinformation. We all know that the violence actions that we've seen by a few paid goons have been politically instigated by known architects of violence and therefore cannot be categorized as peaceful assembly as alleged by the spokesperson. Waiting for the aircraft to... Biashara zinaendelea Kenya. Let me repeat this. The violence acts by a few paid goons have been politically instigated by known architects of violence and therefore cannot be categorized as peaceful assembly as alleged by the spokesperson. They are not peaceful assembly. Far from it, what we have witnessed are violent protests with those involved carrying all manner of crude weapons. We have seen goons destroy a highway with no police around. That is not a peaceful protest. They are not protesting. There are no placards. There are no people shouting slogans. There are no people walking. They are destroying a highway with even no police. Nobody even stopping them. You know, nobody inciting them in terms of saying that they are being provoked by the police. And yet, when I talk about that, you know, that these are what you are calling, you know, demonstrations and peaceful assembly. There's nothing like peaceful assembly there. We are seeing a situation where our women, our mothers have been impacted by these violent goons. Most of them who have been given alcohol and drugs, to go and make this, wanton, to lead to this wanton destruction. Our mothers who want to do their business are afraid because of these few people who are basically being organized, because this is not about cost of living at all. This is about trying to put political pressure, a form of insurrection for people to try to gain positions in government through the back door. It's like you lose the World Cup, then you start organizing goons to start destroying the stadium so that you can be given half of the cup. It will not happen this time in Kenya. We are a democratic nation and we know what they're doing. This has impacted on the lives of our students. Kenyans have so many students. We are trying to adhere to international standards of our what do you call it? The Sustainable Development Goal, the SDP, so that our children can get good education. We have very good education in Kenya. Yet they are being, they are being stopped by this wanton destruction of property by a few people. The wanton looting of private premises, illegal obstruction of economic activities, and extensive damage of critical public infrastructure attest to the violent nature of these demonstrations, which border on economic sabotage, and therefore they warrant intervention by security agencies. So my international partners and friends, when you see our police getting involved to stop this wanton destruction of property, is because they have to do what needs to be done to protect the lives of people and property of Kenyans as per our constitution and as per the international law. Even the UN Charter has places where it says there's a limit when it comes to peaceful demonstrations. When they start destroying property, the police cannot stand by and watch. So when the police go and they deal with these people, it's because they are protecting property and lives of people. The government of Kenya endeavors to protect the rights of individuals engaged in peaceful assembly and peaceful protests, while at the same time maintaining public safety and order in line with the Constitution of Kenya as provided by the UN Declaration of Human Rights. Now this is very important. Kenya is keeping a close eye on the current architects of the violence and looting experienced in the last couple of days, and will take appropriate actions consistent with the national and international obligations and according to our law. We also urge your international friends to closely, let me repeat this, we urge your international friends to closely scrutinize the architects of the insurrection and anti-democratic elements when they wish to visit their countries, and not allow some of them to go and taint their democratic principles. As we speak, many people are still visiting Kenya. This morning, flights came in with many people. We are receiving many requests for official and state visits because they have faith in our country. As a government, we remain focused on ensuring that Kenya remains an attractive destination of trade, investment, and tourism. So what they are trying to do, thinking they are scaring people off, it is not working. People are coming to Kenya, and people will continue coming to Kenya because Kenya is a safe place and people are continuing with their lives. I wish to assure Kenyans in the diaspora that the government is committed to the welfare of Kenyans. I also caution them to be wary of fake and outdated videos that are not reflective of the current situation in the country. There is a lot of propaganda being peddled around, with old videos being recycled. There are some videos that have been circulating. Oh, people are arming themselves. Oh, people are burning. Oh, people are demonstrating. Videos that do not depict the truth. They say this is Kisii. I've seen one video of stones. It's Kisii, Bora, it's Meru. The other thing is in Machakos. It's everywhere. Videos that are not even from Kenya that are being peddled around. So if you're in the diaspora, call your mother, call your grandmother, call your father, your grandfather, call your brothers, get the reality about what's happening in your village. And you'll find that majority of those videos being circulated are nothing but propaganda by the architects of Azimio, who know they are fighting a losing battle because Kenya is a democratic country. I want to assure everybody that we are set, we are going on with business, na mbele iko sawa. Thank you. It was a long statement, and to avoid repeating everything, I'll just say a few things. Nataka kusema kwamba sisi Kenya maisha yetu yanaendelea vizuri. nataka kuhakikishia Wakenya pote walipo ya kwamba sisi hapa wageni bado wanakuja katika nchi yetu ya Kenya. Tunajua ya kwamba ndege zetu zimejaa, watu wanakuja hapa, wageni wanakuja chungu nzima. Tumepata barua hata hapa leo, kuna marais wengine wanataka kuja kumuona rais wetu William Ruto, wanataka kuja kutembelea hapa kwa ofisi zetu, waone hali yetu ya Kenya. Watu wanapenda nchi yetu ya Kenya, wanataka kuja Kenya. Kwa hivyo hizi vurugu ambazo zinaendelea hapa sio vurugu za watu ambao wanataka kuongea kuhusu hali ya shida ya chakula ama shida ya hali ya maisha imepanda. Hali ya maisha imepanda ulimwengu mzima. Sisi tukiwa hapa tunajua kwamba hali ya maisha imepanda kila mahali. Nikienda kule Uingereza niliona maandamano huko, nikaenda kule Italy nikaona maandamano, Ujerumani kulikuwa na maandamano, Ufaransa kulikuwa na maandamano, nikiwa Marekani kulikuwa na maandamano kuhusu hali ya maisha. Tukiwa kule Europa juzi, barabara zilikuwa zimefungwa, watu walikuwa wamegoma kwenda kwa sababu wanaongea kuhusu hali ya maisha imepanda ulimwengu mzima. Ni shida ambayo iko kila mahali, lakini hapa tumeanza kuitatua. Tuna mpango, kumenyesha, chakula kitakuwa kingi, kutakuwa na bumper harvest. Kwa hivyo watu wafahamu ya kwamba hii ni shida ambayo tunaielewa. Wananchi ndio kuna shida, lakini kuna mpango wa kutatua. Hawa watu wanaosema wanaandamana na kuna shida, sio ati ni hali ya maisha imepanda, la, wanajaribu kuingia kwa serikali kutumia mlango wa nyuma. Wanajaribu kuleta vurugu eti ndio wakalishwe chini wapewe nusu mkate. Wanasema hatutaki nusu mkate, lakini nusu mkate wanataka. Waliambiwa na rais wetu William Ruto ya kwamba wajipange, tuwe na mswada, wawe na ofisi ya mpinzani mkuu wa serikali, hawe pale bunge, ana mshahara, gari yake, passport yake ya diplomatic passport, na watu wake wanafanya kazi, wanachunga serikali, wanatupinga tufanye mambo yetu katika njia ya demokrasia. Hawataki kwa sababu wanataka nusu ya serikali. Lakini wajua ya kwamba as William Ruto used to say by quoting, I think the quote by Bob Marley and also by Abraham Lincoln, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. Ukorao tunaofahamu bana, mimi nimeuona nikifanya kazi msemaji wa serikali na Kibaki. It's the same game they are playing. Kwa hivyo tunahakikishia Kenya kwamba maisha yako sawa, tutaendelea mbele, wageni bado wanakuja Kenya. Hata juzi jana tu tumeambiwa kwamba IMF imetupa mpango mpya pamoja na World Bank na wawekezaji wengine wanakuja hapa Kenya, biashara zinaendelea, tunazindua mipango. Kwa hivyo Kenya iko imara na mbele iko sawa. Mwisho nikusema hivi, uliona barua imeandikwa eti wanaitwa huyu msemaji wa Umoja wa Mataifa mambo ya haki za binadamu akisema ati Kenya kuna utumiaji wa nguvu, kwamba tunataka watu waandamane kwa njia nzuri. Nasema si hatuna shida watu waandamane, lakini hizi vurugu ambazo tunaziona hapa sio maandamano. Juzi tuliona watu waking'oa reli pale Mlolongo, njia ambayo naifahamu kabisa hapo Machakos County. Hapo waking'oa reli hakukuwa hata askari hata mmoja waseme ati ni askari waliofanya wapigane. Walienda peke yao, wanaanza kung'oa barabara, si kung'oa reli, wanang'oa barabara, wanaharibu highway hapo Mlolongo, wanaharibu bidhaa za watu. Hamna hata askari mmoja anatupatia gas, hakuwa na askari. Wamejipeleka wenyewe kuharibu mali ya wananchi, mali ya serikali, kwa sababu sio maandamano. Maandamano tunayafahamu ni watu kuandamana, kupiga kelele, mnapeana makaratasi, mnarudi kwenu. Hiyo ndio maandamano. Hii kwenda kuharibu mali ya serikali, hiyo sio maandamano. Huu ni mpango wa kuharibu na kuchoma Kenya ambao sisi hatutakubali. Na mimi nawaomba ndugu zangu wa nje kuambia kwamba nyinyi mnaposema eti kuna watu 23 waliouawa, weko wapi watu 23? Nipe majina yao. Mnaposema ati polisi wanatumia nguvu kuliko kawaida, hebu nionyeshe polisi wanatumia nguvu kuliko kawaida wakati hao watu wanachoma bidhaa na kuua watu. Wakati wanasema ati watu wameuawa ni polisi wameua, ulimwona alimpiga risasi huyo mtu akasema ni polisi amemuua huyu na huyu? Mtu anayevunja sheria atachukuliwa hatua. Lakini kuna ukora watu wanatumia hapa kujaribu kuharibu nchi ya Kenya na sura ya Kenya. Kwa hivyo tunawaambia kwamba hawa watu waliandika barua ambao ni uongo, ambao haina msimamo, na tunawaambia kwamba sisi hatutaki watu ambao wanatumiwa kipropaganda na watu wachache ambao hawataki Kenya iwe ni nchi ya demokrasia. Asante. Tutachukua maswali. Nisema nyimbo unaifanyia